Hello, this is Coding Gicha for full-stack developers. tmux is often used when working with multiple terminals in a single terminal. However, it requires additional installation and learning. Because tmux's key mappings are unfamiliar, some users even configure v-style mappings. Vim's terminal can only be run in split windows. However, if you can create a terminal page consisting of only the entire window, you can use Vim's terminal instead of tmux to work with multiple terminals. Instead of using additional tools like tmux, I'll explain how to split the terminal screen into multiple windows using Vim's terminal. I'll also explain how to select and copy desired areas of terminal output. Let's launch Vim. Let's add a horizontally split terminal window. Vim only supports running a terminal by adding it as a split window. Let's move to a text editing window. Close this window, and the terminal will remain in the full page. Let's switch to terminal command mode by pressing Ctrl+W:. Let's save a page containing only a terminal window as a session. Let's save it as term v, meaning terminal via Vim. Let's exit Vim. Let's load the Vim session file I just saved. As intended, only one terminal is running, but the Vim buffet tab line at the top is a bit of a nuisance. I set the tab line to only show when there are multiple buffers in the buffer list, but it didn't work properly. I'll discuss a solution later. You can enter terminal command mode by pressing Ctrl+W followed by :. Now you can execute Vim commands. Let's add a horizontally split terminal by running term. Let's run the tree view so the output scrolls. You'll need to scroll to see past output. Switching to terminal normal mode allows you to work with the terminal output as in normal mode. Press Ctrl+W, then a capital N to enter terminal normal mode. Another shortcut is to hold down Ctrl, then press \N. You can move the cursor using H, J, K, L or the arrow keys. You can also move the cursor to the top of the window with G. You can also enter visual mode and select a region. Since the end of a line is a new line, it's best to select the region up to that point and copy it. Let's move to the bottom of the window with a capital G. Press I to return to terminal mode. In terminal, data stored in the system clipboard can be pasted with Shift-Ctrl+V. You can also use bash shell shortcuts like Ctrl+U. Let's exit the terminal. The terminal has closed, but the horizontally split window remains blank and remains in normal mode. You need to close it by pressing Q in command mode. This behavior doesn't occur when adding terminal windows to Vim. Let's enter terminal command mode and relaunch term. This time, instead of using exit to close the terminal, I'll exit directly from terminal command mode by pressing Q. Simply pressing Q won't close the terminal because the process is still running. You need to force it to close by pressing Q followed by the exclamation point. However, this isn't a good idea as there may still be processes running. When only one terminal window remains, exit also closes Vim. Special purpose buffers with modifiable properties disabled, like the terminal window, are not managed by Vim's buffer list. Navigating requires a buffer in the buffer list, but because there was no buffer in the buffer list, navigation was not smooth. To make the buffer exist in the buffer list, I'll add a file name when launching Vim. I'll add a terminal window. I'll navigate to the buffer window managed by the buffer list. I'll close the buffer window, leaving only the terminal window. The buffer window is closed, but the corresponding buffer remains in the buffer list. I'll save the state with only the terminal window as a session file. Only one terminal window is visible on the screen, but the .vimrc buffer remains inactive, so it's in a different state than the previously saved session file. Let's exit and reload the session file into Vim. The Vim buffet setting to display tab lines only when there are multiple buffers in the buffer list works well. Let's enter terminal command mode. I'll add a terminal as a horizontally split window. I'll also add a terminal as a vertically split window. Let's exit the terminal from the added terminal windows using exit. There will no longer be any empty buffer windows, and they will close when the terminal is closed. Let's create terminal output using the "L" command. Let's switch to terminal normal mode. The line numbers I configured in Vim will now appear. Line numbers don't have much meaning in the terminal, and they actually add to the clutter. The line numbers appear and disappear when switching modes, creating a cluttered feeling. Let's hide the line numbers in terminal normal mode. When opening a session file with Vim, you can add desired settings after the C option. However, running this long command every time is cumbersome. Let's open the session file and add additional settings. Let's disable line numbers. If you're using Vim version 8 and have configured a color scheme, the background color may appear black when you load the session file. In Vim 8, you'll also need to remove the background color. Now, if you open a session file with only one terminal left, the line numbers will not be visible when switching to terminal normal mode. Opening a session file with Vim can be a bit cumbersome. You can register it as a function in a bash shell script and execute it immediately. Let's create a function with an appropriate name. Let's configure a command to open a session file with Vim, leaving only one terminal. For the settings added to .bashrc to take effect, you must restart the terminal emulator. Now, simply executing the registered function name allows you to work with multiple terminals. Let's use the "L" command to generate output in the terminal. Let's switch to terminal normal mode. Since line numbers are no longer displayed in terminal normal mode, the line numbers don't appear and disappear when switching modes. While you can select and copy areas using visual mode, the bash shell already provides powerful history and keyboard shortcuts, so you won't feel the need to switch to terminal normal mode to copy previously executed commands. This is more useful when referencing the results of bash shell commands. For example, if you add a compose key, you must do so while maintaining the value set in XKB options. Copying output results is not possible using the history and shortcuts provided by the bash shell itself. Instead, it requires a somewhat more complex process using commands like xclip and pipe. Switching to terminal normal mode also allows you to easily copy output results. Let's add a compose key while maintaining the existing XKB options. I'll paste the value copied in terminal normal mode with Shift-Control-V. I'll also add a compose key with caps lock. It is also possible to run Vim from the Vim's terminal. Line numbers aren't visible when running the terminal alone, but they're visible again when running Vim. I'll also run Vimy from the Vim's terminal. The term.v.vim file, which contains a page with only one terminal window and is saved as a session, is currently untracked. I'll push it to the Git repository server. This time I've configured multi-terminal operations through the Vim's terminal. I personally recommend this method because it eliminates the need for installing additional tools like tmux. Using tmux requires additional installation and learning. If you're unfamiliar with tmux's key mappings and need to configure v-style mappings, using the Vim's terminal is a more convenient option. Of course, tmux provides more functionality to detach and attach a running process. The process detaching feature is perhaps more useful in remote terminals than in local terminals. It's useful when you're working on a remote terminal at work or a cafe and need to move to another location. If the task requires a long execution time, detaching the process with tmux and then disconnecting the remote connection will still keep it running. In a local terminal, this feature isn't particularly beneficial because the process won't be maintained unless you power down your laptop, so it's only useful for remote work. However, for the normal user, it's rare to need to maintain a process for a long time while working remotely. The unique advantages of tmux aren't particularly useful for the normal user. For other multi-terminal tasks, the Vim's terminal is sufficient, and if you're familiar with Vim, no additional learning is required. Thank you for watching.